The one thing that I'm lacking in my life is like real connection. Possibly because I'm insecure, I've got no mates. So it's Jen, isn't it?
You're Nick.
Yeah.
Do you want some gin?
Oh, yes, I could kiss you.
Don't do that. Just make it weird.
You're great.
I try.
Oh, is that go time? Sorry.
Welcome to Cordkillers, the show about watching the stuff you love, when you want, where you want, however you want. I'm Tom Merritt.
Hey, I'm Brian Brushwood, and normally I'm aware of when to start the show. Unfortunately, I was waiting for them to say, "Am I being unreasonable?" Which
Seriously,
is the title of the show.
I was just sitting there watching that trailer and forgot we were doing the show. Like, that's how good that was. As soon as you said, "Oh, that's go time," I'm like, "Oh, right. Yeah, I'm not just watching this trailer." Yeah.
So that was a trailer for Hulu's Am I Being Unreasonable? This is a comedy thriller. We only saw the first half of that trailer, but it actually turns into a bit of a thriller series. That's coming on April 11th. It looks interesting. It's a BBC co-production, I believe. So check it out.
So there are dark secrets, I understand.
Oh, dark. Oh, and there's no light at all, Tom. You can't find a photon to save your light.
Nothing to reflect anything. It just absorbs the light.
Oh, yeah.
The way we absorb the world of entertainment.
Tom,
our primary target.
normally on this program we try to have guests.
Or
we
not.
try to ramp up all of the energy.
Can't stop them.
I get the vague impression that both of us are a little bit exhausted, as though we just spent an exciting 4 days, which we'll elaborate on later.
Yeah. After talk today for the patrons going to be especially full of secrets.
Yep.
Oh.
Maybe not dark, but about those past 4 days.
We're gonna bring you the
won't wanna
photons.
miss being a patron today.
But until
Now,
then,
time for the primary target. You know, Wired has been really good at bringing up these interesting questions. They have a story by Angela Watercutter up right now called The Last of Us Signals the End of an Era. As HBO Max morphs into a new streaming service, the show feels like the final salvo for a particular kind of viewing experience. And that kind of viewing experience that Angela Watercutter is talking about is the Sunday night premiere. She writes, "It stands to be one of the last, if not the last, breakout show to premiere before HBO Max, the streaming service where most people watch the series, merges with content from Discovery Plus." Now, the merger's already happening. They're putting Discovery stuff on HBO Max and they're not getting rid of Discovery Plus. But I assume Watercut means the last thing to happen before the big relaunch, if they rename HBO Max or whatever they do. Nevertheless, I think she's on to something. Timed release watching is rare, even with shows like Picard or Poker Face that come out weekly and have large followings. The Sunday night HBO release has a certain early 21st century vibe to it that the other drops don't. Part of it is HBO's insistence on dropping the episodes at the same time they premiere on linear, 9 p.m. Eastern. Other streaming shows will often arrive at midnight on their release day. So if viewers are really into it, like with some of the Marvel stuff, they might stay up and watch, but most viewers will just watch throughout the day on their own schedule. More people watch Sunday HBO shows within the hour after it drops. So, Brian, the question is that just the last of a bygone age? Or should HBO keep that? Is that an advantage they have that people expect that from them?
so when I read the headline, I kind of rolled my eyes where it's like end of an era. That's what everybody says. But then the content of the article, I think, is dead on. And in a way, it put words to something I've been feeling and fearing for a long time, which is there is something special about the prestige television of HBO. And it is going to get more divided. I'm certain. I'm going to say something that factually is probably not true, but storytelling wise is true. Like, there's never going to be an album to beat Michael Jackson's Thriller. There used to be a monoculture. There's never going to be anything that beats MASH's finale, because that was when there was such a narrow divide of content channels that
you mean like the statistical success of those?
Well, no. What I mean is, let's say by the
like
numbers,
everyone in the
numbers
United
of Americans
States watched the MASH finale.
Exactly,
that night,
right?
Even if they hadn't really been watching MASH a lot, everybody tuned in.
Correct. And on the one hand, it's great that we're subdividing into pocket cultures. It's great because everybody can be a fan of an increasingly number of esoteric things. But what is the other side of that? What are we losing? Are we losing a Sopranos moment or the Wire moment or what have you?
Yeah.
But I vaguely had the exact same feeling watching The Last of Us, and I've been banging the drum on this program for a while that I don't particularly care for the dilution of the brand value of HBO, but that's the natural flow of things, and so be it.
Yeah, it's a more precise conversation than the one about binging, binge releases like Netflix does versus weekly releases. It's saying we not only want the water cooler moment of the new episode this week, we want the water cooler moment of posting on Mastodon or Twitter or whatever it is you use at the same time everybody else is watching. And so you're having this real-time conversation. It's something that still exists with sports, with award shows, with news events that are happening live, the Olympics, things like that. Can and should HBO or others keep that for the biggest releases? It's not going to matter for small releases, I guess. Although I guess if you have a cult enough audience that wants to talk about it on Twitter, then maybe it does. In fact, maybe I'm talking myself out of that last statement. Maybe it matters more for the cult releases than it does for the big releases, because that's where the people who like them can confirm their love with other people who like them. But yeah, I wonder if that's something the services are missing by just practically dropping them at midnight, which I love. I love when I can just watch that day's show whenever it's ready. But I do think that there's something special about everybody's watching it now. It just started at 6:00, and that was true for Game of Thrones. It was true for The Wire, etc. I think they probably should keep it until they find a very compelling reason not to.
There was a telling moment that I didn't expect, and I haven't experienced in a minute, and I wonder how long I'll continue to experience it. But your friend of mine, Andrew Heaton, said, "Hey, can we watch The Last of Us together?" And I did the math, and I'm like, well, it releases at 8 p.m., and in order to make this happen with Andrew Heaton, that means our usual routine of me, my daughter, and my wife, and my dog all cuddled up watching it at about 8:15 would have to inject a Andrew Heaton into it in our media room inside our house. And I responded, you know what? I'll watch it again the following day with you. And I don't know if those days are numbered or not, because that's a precious experience for me and my teenage daughters and our family.
Either way, I'm convinced after reading this that the midnight release is not the thing that everybody should do for every show. Because what I don't love is The Mandalorian or the Hawkeye or whatever comes out on Disney Plus, and I have to avoid spoilers all day.
Right.
Because the most devoted people stayed up late, watched it immediately, and then want to talk to everybody about it. And I totally understand the wanting to talk to everybody. The most devoted fans that stay up and watch it as soon as it drops are the ones who are most likely going to want to talk about it. That makes perfect sense. So maybe for those kinds of things where you're like, this is going to have a huge number of people talking about it, you come up with a strategy that releases it at a different time in the day that's in the middle of your target audience. Obviously, different time zones around the world and all that, but in the market you're releasing it in.
So here's a fun thing I stumbled across. The Last of Us, I was trying to think of the last time that there was something that felt like this, and the answer was Game of Thrones. And both The Last of Us and Game of Thrones have, they've already published all of the spoilers. The Red Wedding was not a spoiler to anybody who read the book. Everything that's happening in The Last of Us is not a spoiler to anybody who's played the game.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison.
And yet there's something about this forced scarcity that is creating these wonderful moments for us.
Yeah, because it's not about what happens. If it was about what happens, then half the audience would be like, yeah, I played the game, right? It's about seeing it all happen together. Yeah. I don't know. Let us know what you think. Cordkillers@gmail.com. Do you care? Do you like it? Do you not like it? I bet there's a lot of different perspectives on this. I'd love to hear from them.
Well, and on top of that, secondary question, like, is there something to this article, the idea that this is going away? Are we losing this everybody gets together at the same time moment?
Yeah. And I don't know if I buy Watercutter's presumption that when HBO Max relaunches under its new name and brings in all the Discovery content, that it just gets rid of that. But I don't know. Maybe she knows something I don't, and maybe someone at HBO told her that. They wouldn't have to, I guess, is my point. They could keep this kind of release schedule even with the relaunch. So.
Bryce, before we move on, do you agree or disagree with the sentiment that this seems to be the end of an era?
I don't think so, if only because there will be someone out there who can come back to this at any time and say, Poker Face, now Thursdays at 6 p.m., even when HBO decides not to. So the card's always on the table. It will just be interesting.
Somebody else can step up.
Yeah, if it's not HBO. And I bet HBO keeps doing it. This is smart. I bet so.
That's the question is, will so they do that? Or is this the end of the era that like everybody will say, nah, the timed releases of dramas?
I guess that's the difference between coming out at 8 p.m. on Sunday or, 12:01 a.m. right after midnight at the very beginning of Sunday. How early is too early? Because once it's out, it doesn't matter.
I go to bed at 8, so.
Oh, so listen to that one, Mr. HBO.
But in the past, I mean, it's already one.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fair question of whether companies are going to bother doing timed releases. The few that do remain, HBO Max isn't the only one that still does this, but not all of them do that anymore. And will they continue? We do a timed release of this show. It goes live on Mondays at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern time, and then goes right to the patrons. Patrons get it first. Patreon.com/Cordkillers.
And in that spirit, we want everybody to rally around, which is why, in an incredible, astonishing feat, Bryce is able to publish these in the RSS feeds a scant 10 minutes after we go live every single week. Isn't that right, Bryce?
That's right. 10 minutes on the dot, not a second faster or slow.
It's amazing how sometimes he's able to publish them before we do the shows.
That's right.
He's so good at it,
Yeah, this episode's out. So make sure you check out your RSS feed.
Wild?
Yeah, it's crazy.
And if you're hearing us say that, then it must be out.
Yeah. Look at that. Prove that. Checkmate.
Pascal's wager. And of course, the only way to get your own RSS feed with everything all at once, you get early access, you get exclusive access to our After Talk segment, is to become one of our nearly 1,000 bosses over at patreon.com/Cordkillers. You guys keep us loud, live, and independent for are we 10 years yet? How long? How long until we're at 10 years?
Yeah. 1 year. We're in our 10th year.
Are we really?
I believe so.
Yeah, it was 9 years anniversary at the end of December.
That's amazing. Thank you very much to all of the bosses.
Seriously, thank you. Let's talk about how to watch. Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav confirmed that it will continue to offer Discovery Plus separately from HBO Max. I just referenced that. He confirmed it on an earnings call last week. They will continue to add Discovery Plus content to HBO Max. Zaslav said the decision was made because Discovery Plus makes money. He said, quote, "Our strategy is no sub left behind. We have profitable subscribers that are very happy with the product offering of Discovery Plus. Why would we shut that off?" He also noted that Discovery Plus is viewed passively for several hours a day, while HBO Max is watched in the evenings by families for shorter periods of time. Updates on what will happen with HBO Max are going to come at an April 12th press event. So rename, relaunch, change in features, whatever that's going to be announced April 12th. But Brian, the one thing I could never wrap my head around, which is how are you going to get people who are paying, $5 or $6 for Discovery Plus to move to an inevitably more expensive platform, has been answered. You don't. You keep taking their money. Good call, David Zaslav.
That is definitely a good call in the very short term. However, there was an amazing moment. Could we do like a 2-minute side jag on confusion? Like consumers in general don't like to be confused. And I think it's fair to say that all three of us on the panel are fairly confused as to the future of HBO and Max and Discovery Plus and all of those things. They haven't given a clear indication where everything is headed. And there was an object lesson in this. So you got Coke and Pepsi out there in the world, but a third brand that is well beloved and makes very, very good sodas is named Maine Root. They have a spicy ginger beer and a bunch of other stuff. 2 nights ago, we were at an arcade bar that had Maine Root sodas, and my kids all came, and I stood by the soda line, and I watched all these teenagers walk up to it, see a bunch of things they didn't know. They didn't know what was good. They didn't know what they liked. And partly because they're 14 and they haven't learned line etiquette or anything, and partly because they didn't know what the brands were, they just blocked the line and stood there and did just a little bit of a soda, drank it and poured it out, and then did a little bit. Like, the line wouldn't move. And I was like, this is an objectively miserable experience for everyone, because Maine Root doesn't have a strong enough brand, hasn't differentiated its soda brands enough. You got a bunch of kids who don't know the rules about line queuing and all that stuff. That's what I'm feeling now with this whole Discovery and HBO Max thing. Am I alone in this? Am I overreacting?
I don't think you're overreacting, but I think what's confusing is that they keep saying they're going to do things that don't make sense, and then backpedaling and saying, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't change the name of Coca-Cola. Maybe we should just leave Discovery Plus, and take people's money. And you're right, Brian. It may be not a long-term strategy. Discovery Plus at some point may just not be making the money anymore. And at that point, you wind it down. I think that's what Zaslav is saying is, we ran the numbers and it turns out people like paying for Discovery Plus separately. So we're going to do that. I think that's smart. And I wonder if on April 12th, I don't think this is what's going to happen, but I wouldn't be too shocked if on April 12th, they say, guess what? We're relaunching HBO Max. It's got a whole new tech platform that's from the Discovery side. So a lot of those bugs and things that plague the app, those are going away. We're bringing in all this great Discovery content. You can still get it on Discovery Plus if you just want that. But HBO Max is now expanded to include all of this wonderful Discovery content. We're adding these verticals. We've redesigned the nav. It's a total relaunch. And the new name is HBO Max.
Yeah.
They just won't change the name.
It just,
To your point, though, if they change the name, all of a sudden everybody's taking a sip and pouring it out. If they leave it as HBO Max, everybody knows what it is at this point.
yeah, or do they even, since they yanked a bunch of stuff from the service and they
I think you don't think that's overblown? I know people, I don't think anyone's confused about what HBO Max is right now.
It's a pervasive
or
joke, though. I said this before. This is
sure.
It's a
Right.
pervasive meme, and it's hard to work against that.
Among a small percentage. I'm not convinced how damaging that is. It seems damaging when you're seeing it all the time. I get that, but
all I'm saying is, in general, when you press a button on a soda machine with a label, you want exactly the thing you want to know before it even comes out, exactly what you're getting, and they're not doing a good job with that.
Because when you press the HBO Max button instead of Game of Thrones, sometimes Property Brothers comes out. Is that why?
Well, I don't know. This feels like a Tom trap that you're laying for me.
No. This is not. This is a fair. This is a question
I
of
would
like.
say
In other
that's
words,
an
I thought I was
accurate
going to get
description
Coke,
of
and
the problem. Yes,
this.
exactly. Nobody wants to press the Coke button and get Diet Coke or something very close to
HBO
Coke.
Max, they're like, yeah, I'm expecting to see White Lotus and
correct. I want,
but it's
hacks, and suddenly I'm seeing all these HGTV shows.
Correct.
But it is, if we're keeping with this metaphor, this is a buffet vending machine. Whether or not they've got Shasta in there doesn't change the fact that there's still pretty much Coke in there. And if you want a Shasta's there.
That's true.
That's
true.
You're not. If it'd be one thing if people were paying for like buying a season of these shows and then it was changing platforms or the licenses were going away.
So if we're crawling all the way up the metaphor, then a closer thing would be to going to like a Panda Express and there's no fortune cookies.
Like going to Cece's Pizza and they don't have dessert pizza.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Right. Or HBO Max used to be Applebee's, and now it's Vegas Buffet. Is that bad?
I mean, it's technically more. All the Applebee's stuff is in there somewhere in the back.
Yeah, but if you're a big, like, oh, I really preferred the Applebee's experience.
All I know is that confusion is the enemy. And that's something that we try to do in our little online store is never, ever, ever let the customer be confused. And I think that's important.
And we have violated that with our metaphor. So let's move on to the next one. HBO's Casey Bloys confirmed that House of the Dragon will return in 2024. So we're not getting it this year. Bloys specifically said it was a good guess. It will not qualify for the 2024 Emmy Awards, which would mean summer 2024 or later. When asked if there would be other Game of Thrones spinoffs, Bloys kind of was cagey. He said, there's probably a natural limit to how many fans want, but I'm open to any as long as we feel really good about the scripts and the prospects for a series. Bloys also poured cold water on the idea of sequels or spinoffs of other franchises like Succession. And he noted that comedy budgets have gotten too high, and he expects to see a contraction in the number of comedies being made. Side note here, Succession creator Jesse Armstrong told The New Yorker that Succession will come to an end after this fourth season. This is going to be the end of the story. And a reminder, Succession comes back March 26th. So we will not get a succession to Succession, according to Bloys, and we may or may not get any other Game of Thrones stuff unless they really like the idea.
Sorry to put anybody under the spot, but I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, that The Last of Us is the second highest premiere after House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon is technically a new series, but is kind of a prequel sequel to a previous established thing. I wonder if the between the lines talk is that the fall off is greater on House of the Dragon than expected.
It's hard to tell if this is a, hey, House of the Dragon has cooled our enthusiasm, or if David Zaslav's budgetary restrictions have cooled our enthusiasm, right? It could be possible that House of the Dragon is doing just fine. Because remember, they did those comparisons where it kept its audience better than Lord of the Rings, and it does have a huge multi-million person audience. I could see it either way, though. I could see it also, and maybe even both, be, gosh, House of the Dragon, great hit, really expensive. Zaslav said we can never spend that much unless we get double those numbers. So unless we're sure we get double the numbers from a show, we won't be doing it. I could see it being something like that.
We're also seeing, now I know that it's a box office hit, Ant-Man Quantumania, but I know that critically speaking, there's a lot of people who are just burnt out on the continuous shoveling of setting up the next thing. So I wonder if that's a hedge on burnout of Forevermania on each of these shows.
That is the most positive interpretation of this, is Bloys saying, we are not just going to make something because we have the property. We are not just going to milk it until it's dry by, throwing out 1,000 different spinoffs of it. We're only going to make it if it's quality. I'm sure that's the takeaway he would like the audience to have.
Yeah, and to be honest, I would buy it. I mean, that's certainly the kind of rhetoric I want to hear, whether it's, earnest or not.
Yeah. All right, let's get to what to watch in Under Surveillance.
It's all about location. Under surveillance.
This is like stepping through to the other side of that last conversation. In the next few years, you may be watching new Lord of the Rings movies from New Line Cinema.
You know what? I will not. Go ahead, though.
You may, but you may not. You may be like Brian. Studio leaders Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi have brokered a deal to make multiple films. Peter Jackson and his Lord of the Rings co-producers Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens said Warner Brothers and Embracer, quote, have kept us in the loop every step of the way. The two said in a statement, we look forward to speaking with them further to hear their vision for the franchise moving forward. Variety notes that DeLuca and Abdi were at MGM, but left last year after Amazon acquired it, which is interesting, of course, because Amazon is making the Lord of the Rings TV shows. So to try to untie this knot, remember that Amazon has got limited rights through not Embracer, although Embracer and Amazon have had talks to do just some things based on the appendix of the Lord of the Rings novel, What's happening here is that Embracer and Warner Brothers have agreed to let them do other things that Embracer has the rights to, because Embracer owns Middle-earth Enterprises, which manages the estate. So they can give them free reign in a way that Amazon could not get free reign, and they're giving it to Warner Brothers. It sounds like maybe they were talking about giving it to Amazon and ended up not doing that. The proof is in the pudding, Brian. I imagine there's a pitch that comes out of this that you go, you know what, that actually sounds good, but your expectations are low for that to happen.
That's correct. However, let me flip and be more generous here. There are only so many story structures that you could tell, and Amazon is very well positioned by having the rights to the greater Lord of the Rings universe, where it's like, let's say yet again another story comes up. If I say there's a movie about elves, dwarves, humans, and rings, there's only two categories that you're going to put whatever I say next into. Either Lord of the Rings or a knockoff of Lord of the Rings. They have effectively positioned themselves in that. Now, I'll bet that somebody tomorrow could wake up and write an amazing story with amazing new characters that we haven't met before that involves elves, dwarves, humans, and rings, and it'll be great. And so now the question is, does that script go into the category to the general audience of being a Lord of the Rings thing or a knockoff of Lord of the Rings thing? So in that regard, I actually, it all sounds bonkers to me. I'm a little bit tired of all this, but from a business sense, and I'm not even willing to say that it's definitely going to be bad, whatever it is. I know that I personally am a little bit worn out, and we'll see.
There is, of course, the Silmarillion, which has a lot of stories in it, although it is not a story. So you would have to expand on those stories. But there are also expanded and kind of unfinished tales that have been being put out as individual books. So Beren and Luthien, The Children of Húrin, The Fall of Gondolin, The Fall of Númenor. That's another potential opportunity for them to say, hey, these are books that had a complete story in them that we took from the unfinished works, and they sold well. What if we turn those into movies? So it's not new characters, it's Tolkien's actual characters just expanded into a movie. Again, I don't know if that's what they're going to do either, but there's another option for you.
Well, and keep in mind that there's also interesting reboot opportunities when you own a whole universe, like a High School Musical with elves, dwarves, humans, and rings. It's like that gets a lot easier when you own the rights to a thing.
Sure. Yeah. So everybody look forward to the 30-episode Tom Bombadil series coming from Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema.
I'll tell you what, man. I would watch a version of Spinal Tap, but it's about Tom Bombadil in the 1800s. It's like, again, the more of these property rights that you own, the more interesting stuff your writers get to play with.
Yep. And to be clear, joking around about TV shows, because this is about films. This is a deal to make multiple films. Peter Jackson's on board. We'll see where that goes. Matt Smith at Engadget writes that Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania suffers from too many special effects, sadly. That is the title of one of his morning after newsletter articles. It was shot, Ant-Man was, on ILM Stagecraft set. Those are those virtual sets like they use in The Mandalorian. They're massive LED walls that synchronize footage with the actors so they can shoot in the landscape added by VFX. They have it all around them. Are we getting too used to that effect, though? Are we seeing the wires now? Or did Ant-Man just rely on it too much because they were in the quantum realm? By the way, Quantum Mania ticket sales dropped 69% in the second weekend. Biggest second weekend drop of any of the Ant-Man movies, even though it had a nice big opening weekend.
I think you 100% nailed it, Tom. When we saw the first season of The Mandalorian, we couldn't believe how this wide, expansive, shallow depth of field landscape could feel so big, and actors were able to see the worlds that they were engaged with. It felt so novel, and a few years later, it feels so cheap. Like that last episode of Loki just was agonizing. It looked like a play. I could barely handle it, and I still haven't seen the Ant-Man movie because of it.
You know, we were talking about The Last of Us earlier. The thing that I noticed about The Last of Us that proves how expensive it was is because they have wide shots in that show. Not everything is a fantastic 70 millimeter tight shot of a face. Like they actually show you architecture that is affected by the world, where the Marvel stuff, they're just kind of in a video game for an hour and a half, and it's tough. That's tough.
And Trey Warren is saying it's about story, not effects. Certainly, it could be about all kinds of other things too. We're not trying to say it's only down to this, but I thought that was an interesting take to say part of the problem is that they had to rely entirely on that. Because they're in the quantum realm, so you can't shoot on location because it doesn't. Well, we can't get that small yet to visit it, so we have to visually affect it. And I think we're used to this. That the VFX, we always catch up. Star Wars: A New Hope looks dated. In 1977, it was mind blowing. We become literate in whatever the new way of fooling ourselves is, and we get used to it. And I think that's what's happening. Warner Brothers is suing Paramount because even though Warner got to put all the episodes of South Park on HBO Max, Paramount made some South Park specials that weren't episodes. Therefore, Paramount's like, those aren't covered by the agreement. We're putting those on Paramount Plus. And Warner's like, that's not right. That's not how I read the agreement. We should get all of the things you make for South Park. So you need to give us those or pay a fine.
So this is a case where the owner of the content and the owner of the producer is Paramount, correct?
Yes, Paramount makes South Park for Comedy Central, right? They own the license. Actually, I shouldn't say it that way because I actually don't know. I think it's Trey Parker's. I think it's their production company that makes it, but it's made for Comedy Central, and then Paramount gets to license it out to people.
Right. I guess what I'm pointing out is significantly they're not suing Matt and Trey. They're suing Paramount, which I suspect means they're the ones who commissioned the thing, have the thing, distribute the thing, and failed to send the thing over. That tracks.
Paramount. That's very clear. Paramount has the agreement with HBO Max or with Warner that says, okay, we air these on Comedy Central and then we get them for these windows, but then you get all the episodes we make, 10 episodes a season for HBO Max. You can stream those at HBO Max, and they're delivering those. What Paramount did wasn't fail to deliver something. What Paramount did was said, but we're also making these specials, and the specials aren't in the agreement. You want to license the specials, you would have to pay more. And because Paramount Plus is now suddenly more important to us, we're going to put those on Paramount Plus so that we can use the South Park characters in our Paramount Plus advertising as well, and people will go there and find South Park stuff. So it's a clever way of getting around the agreement they had already signed. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, so, man, that's rough. I don't know the specifics, but like, how close is a magazine to a book? Is basically what we're looking at. And are they technically different?
Yeah, if you have the rights to sell all my books, but I'm going to keep my magazines, and then I put out a really thick magazine.
Right. Or you go to graphic
it's like,
novels.
This is a magazine because I put a floppy cover on it, and you're like, that's a book. You just instead of binding it differently. Yeah.
Right.
It's I don't know. I'm not sure Paramount is right in this case, but I admire their cleverness.
Well, and at some point the numbers get big enough that it makes sense to gamble on legal plays. Like I think it's a total of $900 million Paramount Plus put towards new content, and I believe HBO Max paid $1.6 million for the entire per episode for the 300 episodes of the back catalog. This is Brian talking, so almost certainly all the numbers are wrong. But they're big enough numbers that, go ahead and make a legal play. That would be cheaper.
Netflix released a trailer for Fubar, starring Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger as a father who discovers his daughter has been hiding the fact that she's a CIA operative, which is inconvenient because he's also been hiding the fact from her that he is a CIA operative. The 8-episode series arrives May 25th.
Okay, just throwing it out there. What if around episode 6 they reveal that also her mom works for the CIA, and it's definitely True Lies,
and her niece and the puppy. Yeah.
Oh no! No. What I'm proposing is that this is a quiet sequel to True Lies. Yeah.
a mutual friend of ours said that this sort of like dad has a secret sort of movie or plot is pretty popular these days. So what a great way to take a bit of True Lies and a bit of The Last of Us and put it together, right?
Yeah.
Ted Lasso dropped a full trailer in advance of the return of the show on March 15th. Rather than rehash what we keep saying every time there's a new trailer running up to the show, Brian, why don't we pick 3 words to describe our reaction to this trailer? Each of us, you, me, and
I'll go
Bryce.
first.
Yeah.
Have not seen.
Okay.
Did not watch would have also been accepted. Well done, Bryce.
Sure, okay. Very one note, I would say. I think those mean very one note.
Cleverly hiding plot.
I mean, the plot is pretty guessable, right?
Right.
mean,
Listen, for all those people who complain, I hate trailers because they give away everything that's going to happen. You're gonna love this.
this is the trailer
That's
for
true.
you.
This is the trailer
They
for
really
you.
don't tell you jack squat.
They don't tell you.
You know
anything.
who's starring in
There's
it.
like barely any dialogue. There's like 1 or 2 lines in the entire thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think was done on purpose. All right, let's talk about what we've had our eyes on. Brian, what you been watching?
I had a rather extraordinary experience just as I walked into the studio. Of all the episodes of Modern Rogue, there's one episode where one of our folks got injured, and the tension leading up to that moment is so unpleasant that I've had people get up and leave the room. And that was a 10 to 15 minute episode. The episode that just premiered is an hour long, and the stakes were much bigger. And it's a case where, spoiler alert, everything ended up okay, but as over an hour, you find out just how many things could have gone wrong, and just how lucky we were to have emerged unscathed. It's really kind of a fascinating study, because you can see Jason and I coming in kind of defiant and like whatever, and by the end we're just broken. We're just like, this was terribly irresponsible, and we feel very bad about it. It's along the way, a lot of surprises and laughs. Check out the latest episode of Modern Rogue, in which we cut down a tree.
Yeah, and it's great. It's really informative. Like I've seen the early cut, the 22-minute video that they kind of break down in the video, and it's good. But having all this extra context of like, no, this is dangerous. No, this was a bad move. No, this was a bad move. It gives a good perspective. That
And where do you go to find it?
YouTube.com/Modern Rogue or ModernRogue.com.
I love the part where Jason's like, it was at this point that we gave up shooting a TV show and just wanted the tree to come down.
Yes.
safely.
Yes.
Very much so.
It was, yes.
All right. I want to recommend Taxi Driver Season 2. You may have heard me talk about Taxi Driver Season 1. It's available on Viki, Korean drama about a man who operates a taxi service and then has a secret taxi service for people who need vengeance. So there's a secret premium taxi service that you can call to right wrongs in the world, to bring justice that otherwise cannot be brought. Taxi Driver Season 1 sort of wrapped up with everybody going their own ways and fulfilling their storylines. So for Season 2, they had an interesting way of bringing everyone back and saying, well, we have to start up the old thing again. And then they're back into fairly procedural episodes. The third episode is about a woman who gets scammed by a singer. An elderly woman who gets scammed by a singer out of her savings, and they're gonna go to bat for her and figure out how to get justice on the singer, and who's not he's a singer, but that's not really what he does. He's a scam artist. So go check it out. Taxi Driver Season 2 on Viki. Bryce, what should we be on the lookout for?
Hey, I got a recommendation for y'all. This is the new Apple TV sci-fi comedy drama. It's called Hello Tomorrow. So this is on a retro-futuristic Earth that follows traveling salesman Jack and his team of lunar timeshare salesmen. There's a real strong mystery over the story here of what's going on with the company that is selling timeshares on the moon? What's going on with Jack and who are his bosses? Why did Jack recruit his long lost son to be on the team? And also his son doesn't know that's his dad because he walked out of him. Like there's a lot going on. And I think what's really great is you've got a great ensemble cast. You've got a fantastic mix of sci-fi mystery stuff and selling drama. You know, they're like 4 or 5 salespeople at the middle of this cast here. And I think the fact that it's the episode that I have been watching are only about 30 minutes long, so they're also a little shorter.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So there are 4 episodes out now. The 10th episode, all 10 episodes will be out by April 7th. That's called Hello Tomorrow. What do you guys, have either of you guys seen this, watched this?
Well, I've seen the trailer, and I do love the aesthetic of it. It brings to mind Fallout vibes and all that, but the idea of Glengarry Glen Ross, meets Fallout sounds fantastic. I was talking to a friend over the weekend about how Apple TV Plus seems to only be able to manage to make 1 or 2 knockout hits per year. From what you've seen so far, does this feel like a Severance or a Ted Lasso? Or
I think it's great. I definitely think it's great.
In the same class. Wow.
I think some people will find it in that same class. Yeah, I think it's very, very good.
Yeah.
And I think both of you gentlemen would like it a lot. It's pretty good. It's certainly worth giving it the first episode a try because there's a good little bit of mystery. It seems like obvious what the problems are going to be, but is it? I don't know.
There's a twist.
There's a twist. So that's called Hello Tomorrow. Right. That's coming out on Apple TV Plus. If you've got something we should be on the lookout for, please email it to us. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. Thank you.
All right, folks. Brian's Founders Day is coming up, and he's going to tell you everything you need to know about it in 4 seconds right now.
Big tournament, big winners. Everyone plays. Trophy exists.
Wow, that's actually pretty good.
Here's something I've not disclosed. I'll tell you guys the game.
Wow, this is exclusive.
This is the first time I'm telling anyone. So if you haven't seen it, go watch the Monorogue episode where we learned how to play the game Skull. It's a bluffing game where you got 3 flower cards and 1 skull card, and you just bluff your way through everything. You eventually lose lives and only 1 person remains. We're going to set up a gigantic tournament. We're going to play for a few hours, and what I'm hoping is that 100 of us will all be gathered around the very last table, and anybody can win for any reason. We have a bunch of celebrity guests coming out to the picnic. Head on over to founders.scamstuff.com. That's founders.scamstuff.com if you want to come join us on this April 1st. No fooling.
Oh, that's coming up.
Yep, just around the corner. But of course, you're going to need a computer to do this, so head on over to doghousesystems.com/rogue. Spell it right, ROGUE. When you buy a system, you'll get something extra, and you'll be keeping us in business.
Let's move on to the front lines.
Front lines.
Amazon partnered with Cochlear to launch a new app letting Fire TV devices stream over Bluetooth to a cochlear implant, including any apps supported by the platform. Amazon says this will provide a dramatically cleaner, clearer signal than audio from speakers. Amazon does not, however, want you to reprogram the Fire TV remote's buttons. A software update for the Fire TV Stick 4K Max blocks the functionality of software called Remapper, a free program that let you change what launch buttons like Netflix and Hulu do. AFTV News' Elias Saba, who created the app, expects it to be blocked soon on other remotes as well, and does not expect that he will be able to find a new workaround.
The information reports that Apple has hired advertising executive Lauren Fry to build a video ad business for Apple TV Plus. The Verge says this sounds separate from the ad business being created around MLB and MLS streams.
Yeah. I originally thought, well, this is just because they're doing a bunch of live sports. They're going to need ads. And then they put in there like, nah, we don't think that's what this is about. So we might be getting a free ad-supported service from Apple TV for people who don't pay for Apple TV Plus. Now that they've got a big enough catalog, that might make sense.
I'm of two minds. But it'll take too long. Coin flip for me. I don't know which to believe.
The Academy Awards are happening in 2 weeks, so everybody's looking at all the other award shows, like the SAG Awards or the Producers Guild, for some clues as to who Academy members might be voting for. It's a little bit of tea leaf reading, but you can usually tease out at least who the likely ones are. Everything Everywhere All at Once is sweeping everything in these awards, which seems to make it a lock for Best Picture at the Academy Awards, except for the fact that All Quiet on the Western Front isn't competing for awards in all the same contests because of some eligibility differences between the two movies. One that it did compete in was BAFTA, and All Quiet on the Western Front swept. So on Oscar night, the films are only in direct competition for 2 categories: Original Music Score and Best Picture. So there will not be any way to tell how they're doing against each other. They could each be racking up awards, but not against each other until that final Best Picture award goes out.
BAFTA, BAFTA makes sense that they would give the nod to All Quiet. I gotta feel like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
But it wasn't up against Everything Everywhere All at Once there either.
Correct, so but if it was, I think it would have been a shutout.
It's like, basically, All Quiet is sweeping when it is in there.
Right.
Everything Everywhere is sweeping when it is in there. We have never seen them together.
Correct. I guess what I'm saying is, even if they were facing off, I would expect All Quiet to win in Europe, but I would expect Everything Everywhere to win in Western America.
Everywhere else.
Yeah.
Everything.
The Wall Street Journal logo. No, what do you think?
No, but hold on. I want to write a headline that says Everything Everywhere goes to all the... Never mind. Go ahead. I should have just let you
The Wall Street Journal reports that Netflix cut subscription costs in more than 36 countries in recent weeks, according across the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, Europe, Latin America, and some countries, subscription prices dropped up to 50%. This comes as Netflix rolls out restrictions on sharing accounts between households in some regions.
So we told you this. We already told you this, right? We're just following up to be like, oh, the Wall Street Journal finally caught on to what you folks already knew because you listen to Cordkillers.
Yeah, but now it's in the Wall Street Journal. You're welcome, WSJ.com.
Yes, you're welcome, Rupert. Okay, a few other notes here. Meryl Barr recommended Fox's comedy Animal Control last week, and after its premiere February 16th, it is now Fox's most streamed scripted debut. Production on season 3 of Hacks paused as star Jean Smart recovers from a successful heart procedure. All signs are she's recovering very well. Google TV changed its interface Thursday with 4 new content pages under the Apps row in the For You tab. Those pages are Movies, Shows, Family, and Espanol. These changes will be available on Chromecast with Google TV and other Google TV devices. Remember, Google TV is an interface on top of Android TV. The 81st Annual Golden Globe Awards will be scheduled for Sunday, January 7th next year. We don't know where they will be televised. NBC televised them pretty much throughout most of their run until now, and could get the awards back, but it's open for people to buy. The Fubo TV streaming service ended 2022 with 1.4 million subscribers, but $1 billion in yearly revenue. Stephen Fry will host a 20-part run of Jeopardy in the UK for ITV. Netflix and the Pokemon Company released a trailer for a stop-motion animated series called Pokemon Concierge, coming soon. And Chris Rock's live Netflix special, Selective Outrage, is Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Comedian Ronnie Chang will host a pre-show. Remember, this is a live stream on Netflix, so pre-show starts at 9:30. And then David Spade and Dana Carvey are hosting a post-show. They're calling The Show After the Show, featuring appearances by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, J.B. Smoove, and Arsenio Hall. Guests throughout this broadcast are said to include Leslie Jones, Amy Schumer, Cedric the Entertainer, Jerry Seinfeld, Kevin Hart, Matthew McConaughey, Paul McCartney, Sarah Silverman, Wanda Sykes, and Ice-T, among others.
This is Netflix's Super Bowl. It's going to be the biggest thing ever, and they are playing to their strengths. Netflix made an awful lot of bones on the fact that they gave creative control for low-cost entertainment in the form of comedians, doing special after special after special, having incredible artistic freedom, and it doesn't cost a lot to do. The whole world is holding its breath to hear exactly what he's been workshopping whatever content he's gonna do for a year. It's gonna be big, 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 big.
I think what struck me is, as big as this is, and the names that are going to be guests and the special messages and the pre-show and the post-show, that Super Bowl aspect of it, I have not seen it advertised in the places I might have expected to see it advertised.
I suspect that they don't need it. It could be quite literally that to advertise, because we've talked about when something scales streaming live big enough, things break. We've seen concerts break. It may be that the best move, tactically speaking, is to intentionally just let whoever wants to show up, and then let the waves of think pieces and blog posts and whatever carry the bulk of it afterwards.
Yeah. Or just the Twitter buzz, the Facebook buzz gets everybody to come in, which is why you do a pre-show, so everybody piles in. Chaos ASL is saying, oh no, we'll never have appointment viewing again. Oh wait, this is different. This is live. We never, none of us in that first part of the show said that appointment viewing would go away for live things. This is a live thing. It'd be different.
And in fact, you specifically pointed out that sports are doing fine and news does fine, and that's what this is.
This isn't a recorded special being dropped. This is actually Chris Rock is going to perform it live. Anything could happen, kind of situation. All right, let's get to the dispatches from the front. Nikki has a great question. Some workplaces use gift cards as a reward. Nikki says, my husband has an anniversary coming up, which normally would mean a dump of points. So we'd like to get an Apple gift card and use it to get an Apple TV subscription for the year, or a Google Play card and sign up for HBO and Hulu for the year. Do you guys know of any issues with gift cards being used for subscriptions? I know Amazon does not let you use a gift card to subscribe to their channels. You can rent or buy movies, but not subscribe to channels with them.
There's a whole gray market in the way points are exchanged, and cover your children's ears. Like a Home Depot card can be used to purchase online pornography. It's at a reduced rate. You would get more money for it if you used it at Home Depot. But in general, every subscription service is very, very interested in getting you subscribed in such a way that they could keep on charging for a very long time. Because if they get your credit card, even after your credit card changes, like let's say the card is stolen or whatever, you say cancel that number, those, if they're a trusted provider, can continue to charge on the new account long after that old card has gone away. So, and conversely, there's a service called privacy.com, a disclosure. They were a sponsor on Modern Rogue, but I created a debit card with the intention of only having $100 on it so my kids could get an anime service, and when it runs out, it wouldn't keep on charging. And it would not accept that debit card because it was the type of number that it knew it couldn't keep on charging. So yes, there are a number of different, there's lots of consumer blog posts about this kind of stuff out there.
Here's the good news. Apple, specifically on Apple's own support page, says, yes, you can use an Apple gift card to pay for subscriptions. And then when it runs out, then we end your subscription. Because the way Apple does it is you add the gift card amount to an account balance. So you're just drawing on that account. Apparently, Google Play also allows you to use an official Google Play gift card to pay for in-app payments, including subscriptions. You can't take it to something that doesn't take in-app payments, though. So you may have problems with certain subscriptions if they're not offering them through the app. But
didn't Netflix end their iOS subscribing, Tom? Didn't we just cover a few? I want to say a month or so ago.
That wouldn't surprise me.
That's why I was not going to bring up Netflix. But yes, Netflix now takes subscriptions. Netflix can now link you out. This is why I didn't want to bring it up, because I'm not sure I remember it precisely. But I believe Netflix can now send you to their site But I don't think it's an in-app purchase, but I may be messing that up.
Yeah,
So,
and we've explored a little bit like Audible does a similar thing where it's like you're not actually buying anything within the Audible app, but you can spend a quote unquote a credit within the Audible app.
yeah. So if Netflix is sending you outside the app, you wouldn't be able to use the Apple gift card for that. But to Nikki's specific question, we'd like to get an Apple gift card and use it to get an Apple TV subscription. Yeah, you could do that. Apple specifically lets you. Nikki M also says, I'll be honest about the whole account sharing thing. I believe a company should only scale pricing for how many profiles and simultaneous streams. Maybe not counting profiles age locked to 13 and under might be a thing. I don't like a company deciding who my family or household is. We've had a lot of people send this kind of thing of like, just tell me how many streams. I could pay for 1 stream, 2 stream, 3 stream, or 4 stream. Why does it matter where in the world it is?
Yeah, and in fact, if in that world, you could prioritize like, okay, these 3 always go to the front of the line. So if my friend is using it, guess what? Midway through him, trying to ride my coattails, all of a sudden he gets booted off. It's like, well, Brian's watching now. And so it reminds me a little bit of the way Steam handles it with their online games. If somebody is playing an online game and somebody else tries to play an online game, it'll say, warning, you're about to kick off the other person, which if I'm the primary person, yeah, correct. But you can join in offline mode. So it's like, look, man, I just want to play Flappy Bird or whatever on Steam. Then, you sign up in offline mode. That seems very reasonable to me.
Well, and Netflix did that and still does that. That is how its plans are constructed. So the reason that they are going for the out of household thing is they think there's enough abuse of even that system, even when there are only 1, 2, or 4 streams, that there are people who would pay otherwise who are not paying. And they've gotten to saturation in the United States that it's now enough shareholder pressure and worth the value to try to go after that extra money. The other thing that Nikki said is just make it easy to roll off your profile and start a new account. That they're doing. That they are also doing. So that part is true. Dan in Quite Chilly, Michigan says, maybe I've missed something obvious, but I keep waiting for someone to bring up the issue of people who leave their home for entire seasons. Many people live in northern parts of the country, move south for the coldest winter months. That they also have addressed. It is not difficult to reauthorize your location. You can't reauthorize it. I don't know what the exact months is. You can't reauthorize a new location every month,
every day,
not every week,
or whatever.
But if you're living in 2 locations over the course of a year, when you go south, you can reauthorize it. And then you're fine there until you go back north, then you reauthorize it again.
Tyler wrote in asking about what about VPNs? And to be honest, look, there's only so many VPN providers unless you're going to roll your own, and they only have so many IP addresses. So there's a number of places increasingly, like, for example, in order to log into a bank or financial thing, I've discovered that it's best for me to log out of a VPN because otherwise it's going to ask me 75 different trivia questions about myself. So I suspect that VPN addresses are just going to be universally blacklisted pretty quick here.
Here's the fun thing about what Tyler was suggesting, though. It wasn't just a simple VPN. It was VPN to your home network through a personal VPN. Now, this is not something that every single person's going to want to go through the trouble of doing. But if you're up to the challenge of running your own VPN, Netflix is not going to be able to block that one, because the way they block it is to know what the IP addresses of the VPN providers are. And if the IP of your personal VPN is your home IP address, they're not going to block it. And then you can travel wherever you want, VPN back into your own home and appear as if you're home, and Netflix won't be none the wiser. So again, not an easy thing for every single person out there to do. But if you're like, oh yeah, I think I would know how to set up WireGuard to my home server, that's a great way to just not have to deal with this at all.
Yeah, and on top of that, just to be clear, I don't think they're going to announce that they're blocking the known IP addresses of VPN services. I think they'll just say, whoopsie doodle, having a hard time.
Well, they've been talking about
you.
that. We covered that several years ago, just for region blocking. They've been fighting the VPNs and trying to stop them. So yeah, I don't think that's going to decrease. Josh said, I wanted to share my feedback based on the use of the new Movie Pass. Okay, Movie Pass is back. Josh took it for a spin. Here's what he said. I used MoviePass to watch Ant-Man last week, and it was pretty seamless. Below is the process for a Regal theater next to me. Check in on the app to select which movie you want to watch. You can only do this when you are close to the theater. Once checked in, walk in and buy your ticket and pay with the MoviePass card. It was pretty straightforward and worked well. Since it was Friday at 6:30, it cost 30 credits. But most days for my theater, a movie cost about 10 credits. So that's about 3 movies a month for $10, which, if you ask me, is a good deal.
Yeah, it's all timeshares on the moon.
It's all timeshares on the moon until somebody gets hurt. Well, thanks everybody for being with us, for supporting us at Patreon. Our website is cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. We're live on twitch.tv/Night Attack Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We will talk to you next time.
Hey, Tom Merritt, what's going on?
I'm just hanging out here watching this scroll go by. What are you doing?
Trying to set up a bit where we thank our beautiful, beautiful patrons, all these wonderful
names. I'm sorry,
names.
I'm too distracted looking at these beautiful, beautiful patron names going by. Look at that one. I mean, if you wanted to be one of these people, patreon.com/cordkillers would be the place to go.
I mean, they're scratching our itch, like, because we're addicted.
As long as it's consensual, like,
we're addicted to their money.
And love. Might as well face it.
Well, God damn it.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.